When the empath heals the core wound, attraction flips instantly. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi, have you ever noticed how, once you begin to heal, the same energy that used to attract pain suddenly starts attracting peace? In today's video, when the empath heals the core wound, attraction flips. Instantly from spiritual wisdom, we'll explore why true transformation doesn't begin with changing others. It begins with healing the invisible patterns within yourself. As you rise in consciousness and release the old emotional imprints, you shift your frequency, and everything around you responds. Tell me in the comments, what core wound are you ready to release today? Let's start this journey of spiritual awakening together. 1. The core revelation. Carl Jung observed that when an empath finally heals their deepest psychological wound, the entire nature of attraction transforms in an instant. It's not a slow process, but an energetic shift so sudden and complete that Jung described it as terrifying. This is because the empath's entire vibration changes the frequency that once magnetically pulled in people who reflected their unhealed pain no longer resonates with them. The empath begins to rise above cycles of emotional dependency, toxic love, and subconscious patterns of self-sacrifice. They are no longer drawn to chaos or emotional unpredictability because their nervous system, once addicted to it, has learned peace. When this inner calm replaces old wounds, the outer world mirrors that healing, and new types of people start to appear. Those who bring safety, respect, and balance. This transformation is the silent proof that healing is not just psychological, but profoundly spiritual. It marks a spiritual awakening, where the empath no longer seeks validation, but vibrates from self-worth. The heart that once absorbed pain like a sponge now radiates strength and clarity. This is the point where the soul reclaims its power, where what once felt like love born from fear transforms into love born from awareness. The empath's energy field becomes lighter, their boundaries firmer, and their intuition sharper. They begin to recognize that the people and experiences that used to feel like home were actually reflections of their inner wounds. The moment that realization takes root, the old attraction fades and a new alignment emerges. Jung's insight reveals a universal law of spirituality. When consciousness changes, attraction changes. Healing the core wound is like changing the frequency of your inner signal. Suddenly, only those tuned to your new vibration can find you. This is why the shift can feel disorienting. Familiar connections fall away, and the empath may even grieve the loss of intensity. Yet beneath the discomfort lies liberation. For what once drained their life force no longer holds power. The empath's energy becomes sacred ground, no longer a battlefield of emotion, but a sanctuary of peace. And in that sanctuary, attraction flips instantly, not because the world outside changed, but because the soul within remembered its wholeness. In this state of spiritual wisdom, the empath learns that every wound was a teacher, every heartbreak a path to awakening. Healing does not erase the past, but transforms it into strength. What once drew them into lessons now draws them into purpose. This is the essence of true spiritual awakening, when the light of consciousness replaces the patterns of pain, and the empath no longer attracts from need, but from presence, alignment, and love. Comment below, I am ready to heal my core wound. If you're ready to step into your true power and experience the shift where love, energy, and attraction finally align with your healed spirit. 2. The real core wound. The real core wound of the empath is not trauma or abandonment. It is self-suppression. From a young age, you were told you were too sensitive, too emotional, or too judgmental. And over time, those words taught you to hide your perception and silence your intelligence to preserve relationships with people who couldn't handle being seen clearly. You learned that authenticity might cost you love, so you began doubting your intuition, minimizing your truth, and adapting yourself to fit into spaces that could never hold the fullness of your being. What you didn't realize was that this quiet act of self-abandonment became a pattern deeply woven into your energy. You started to associate love with shrinking and connection with compliance. But true spirituality is not about pleasing others. It's about remembering who you are when you stop apologizing for your sensitivity and start honoring it as your greatest strength. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you suppress your truth, the unconscious drives your relationships, pulling you toward those who reinforce your old wounds. You attract people who need your empathy but cannot reciprocate it, who crave your light but reject your clarity. They are drawn to your energy not because they love you fully, but because your silence sustains their comfort. Yet the moment you awaken to this cycle and choose to honor your own truth, the entire energetic dynamic begins to shift. Those who once fed off your self-suppression feel the vibration change because you are no longer an energetic match to their unhealed patterns. This is the invisible moment when attraction flips, when the one who once felt powerless in relationships suddenly becomes magnetic through authenticity and spiritual development. Healing this core wound doesn't mean hardening your heart. It means letting your heart lead with consciousness. You begin to see that your emotions are not weaknesses, but sacred messages that reveal where you've betrayed yourself to keep the peace. Each boundary you set, each truth you speak, and each moment you choose alignment over approval becomes an act of reclaiming your soul. The empath's path of healing is not about changing who you are. It's about coming home to the depth, intuition, and love that were always within you. Through this process, your energy transforms. It becomes lighter, cleaner, and more aligned with divine truth. You stop seeking validation in others and instead find strength in your own presence. You no longer chase connection because you understand that real connection begins with self-connection. And that's when attraction flips in its purest form. The people and situations that once mirrored your pain begin to fall away, replaced by those who resonate with your healed vibration. You stop attracting lessons and start attracting reflections of your growth. You stop begging for love and begin to radiate it. In this state, spirituality and emotional healing merge. You become a living embodiment of balance, self-awareness, and divine alignment. The empath who once dimmed their light to survive now shines unapologetically, and that light becomes both protection and magnetism. The wound that once defined you becomes your wisdom, and the love you once sought from others finally flows freely from within. 3. The victim cycle. Because you doubt your own perception, you keep attracting people who exploit that very uncertainty. Carl Jung, in his profound spiritual wisdom, observed that the empath often lives in a repeating cycle of confusion and self-betrayal. It begins the moment you sense manipulation, a quiet feeling that something isn't right. Instead of trusting that intuition, you question yourself. Then, the manipulator reinforces your doubt, making you believe the problem lies within you. To keep the peace, you suppress your intelligence, silence your inner voice, and shrink your light just to hold the relationship together. And so, the cycle continues until one day, a catastrophic betrayal forces you to see the truth you've been avoiding all along. That betrayal, though devastating, becomes your awakening. You realize that your empathy was never the weakness others made you believe it was. It was your greatest power, misused because you didn't yet understand its boundaries. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In that moment of awakening, you stop seeking love in those who drain you and begin cultivating love from within. You start to understand that true peace cannot exist where self-denial lives. What once drew you toward manipulation now repels it because you have healed the part of you that needed saving. Attraction flips instantly, not because others change, but because you have. Your frequency rises, your energy stabilizes, and suddenly you attract people who meet you in truth instead of taking from your light. As you heal, you stop replaying the same emotional script. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth or overextend your compassion to those unwilling to meet you halfway. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that every manipulative relationship was a mirror showing us where we had not yet trusted ourselves. Once you integrate that lesson, the outer world transforms effortlessly. The confusion that once blinded you becomes clarity. The pain that once silenced you becomes wisdom. The empath who once absorbed others' pain begins to radiate stability, authenticity, and quiet power. This shift is not about revenge or distance, it's about alignment. When you finally make the unconscious conscious, the victim cycle ends. The betrayal that broke you becomes the teacher that built you. The same energy that once drew in manipulation now magnetizes genuine connection. You stop chasing what was never yours and start attracting what your healed heart naturally deserves. In the end, when the empath heals the core wound, the entire field of attraction rearranges itself. Those who are drawn to your doubt disappear, and those who recognize your wholeness appear. You realize that love was never about losing yourself. It was about finding yourself through the mirror of your own awakening. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on breaking free from the victim cycle and stepping into your true power of healing, attraction, and emotional mastery. 4. The clarity event. A betrayal so deep, whether through lies, infidelity, or emotional manipulation, becomes what Carl Jung called the clarity event, a moment when illusion dies and truth is born. The empath, once tangled in confusion and self-blame, suddenly sees everything with unfiltered clarity. Their intuition, once doubted and dismissed, stands vindicated. Yet instead of collapsing, they enter a stillness that feels almost supernatural. They no longer react, they observe. This serenity is not numbness, it is awakening. It marks the beginning of shadow integration, when suppressed intelligence, intuition, and strength rise from the unconscious. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In this instant of realization, fate transforms into awareness, and awareness transforms into freedom. The empath, who once poured all their energy into understanding others begins redirecting that energy inward. This is where spiritual awakening unfolds, not in light alone, but in the meeting of light and shadow. Every piece of wisdom that was buried beneath self-doubt begins to surface. The empath realizes that their empathy was never weakness. It was misdirected strength. They stop trying to fix others and instead begin to heal themselves. What once looked like emotional detachment becomes emotional mastery. The clarity event does not harden the heart, it purifies it. Through this transformation, they embody true spirituality, not blind forgiveness, but the courage to see clearly and love wisely. As this internal shift deepens, the empath's energy changes. The same frequency that once attracted chaos now emits peace, and the universe mirrors that vibration back. The narcissists, manipulators, and emotional takers can no longer find resonance with this new frequency. Attraction flips instantly because energy alignment has changed. Where there was once confusion, there is now coherence. As Jung observed, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. By embracing the lesson hidden in betrayal, the empath stops resisting pain and begins transforming it. They recognize that every wound was a teacher, every heartbreak a mirror, revealing what was unhealed within. This clarity becomes their new foundation. They no longer chase love to feel worthy. They radiate worthiness. They no longer seek validation. They embody it. The empath's calmness becomes magnetic. Their silence becomes sacred, and their boundaries become their most powerful form of compassion. Their relationships shift because they now attract what matches their inner peace. This is the divine paradox of awakening. When the empath stops trying to be chosen, they become the chooser. The energy that once pleaded to be understood now stands firm in self-understanding. And in that stillness, love finally finds them, not because they chase it, but because they have become it. This is the essence of the clarity event. The moment the empath transcends illusion, embraces truth, and realizes that healing the core wound is not just recovery, it is rebirth. 5. Shadow integration. In Jungian terms, the shadow is everything we reject in ourselves, and for the empath, it is often the emotional debris of others that has been mistaken for their own. When you finally begin to face that shadow with honesty and compassion, a profound shift occurs. You stop apologizing for your emotions and start reclaiming your strength. This is the moment when spirituality and spiritual development merge, not as abstract ideals, but as lived truth. You begin to see yourself clearly, without shame, and feel deeply, without drowning. Integrating the shadow is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming whole. It is realizing that your sensitivity is not a curse, but a sacred instrument meant to guide you through the world with wisdom rather than fear. As you acknowledge the parts of yourself you once rejected, anger, need, envy, or desire, you no longer suppress them. Instead, you let them speak, learn from them, and release what no longer serves you. When you do this, your energy reorganizes itself. The same vibration that once attracted emotional takers now repels them. Those who seek to use your kindness will sense they can no longer penetrate your field, and those who meet you with respect and emotional depth will feel drawn to your presence. This is what it means to be psychologically complete, a sovereign being with boundaries rooted not in fear, but in clarity. You no longer seek approval to feel safe. You find safety within yourself. You stop rescuing people who refuse to grow and instead hold space for those who rise to meet you. Every emotion that once overwhelmed you becomes a compass. When you feel anger, it points to where your boundaries were crossed. When you feel sadness, it reveals what your soul has outgrown. When you feel joy, it shows alignment. Each feeling becomes a guide toward greater awareness. And this is where true spiritual development happens, not in escaping emotion, but in integrating it. Your nervous system learns calm without repression, strength without armor, and compassion without depletion. You no longer absorb energy unconsciously. You sense it, honor it, and decide what enters your space. This new inner coherence makes you magnetic, because authenticity always attracts what is real. Old patterns dissolve quietly. You no longer chase love, you invite it. You no longer perform to be understood, you speak to be heard. You no longer fear solitude, because solitude becomes sanctuary, a space where your intuition sharpens and your energy restores. You begin to see how every rejection was redirection toward alignment. Every heartbreak was initiation into truth. In this clarity, attraction flips instantly. The connections that drained you lose their grip, and the people who see your light with respect, not hunger, begin to appear. This is the alchemy of shadow work, turning what once felt like weakness into sacred power. Empaths often ask, "How do I start?" Begin with awareness. Name what you feel without judgment. Notice when you abandon yourself to keep peace. Replace reaction with reflection. Practice saying no without explanation. Let silence protect your truth when words are unnecessary. This daily act of self-honoring builds a foundation of self-trust, the cornerstone of any spiritual journey. As Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is your task, to make peace with the darkness within, so that your light can shine without distortion. When you do, your presence becomes your power. You attract not through need, but through alignment, not through fear, but through wholeness. And that is when spirituality becomes not something you study, but something you live, calm, grounded, radiant, and completely free. Leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss new insights on healing and transformation. Type in the comments, "I embrace my shadow and walk in light," to affirm your journey of spiritual integration. 6. The attraction flip. When the empath heals the core wound, everything begins to shift from the inside out. The moment self-awareness blooms, their energy signature transforms into something unmistakably sovereign. Those who once preyed on their kindness suddenly sense that the old access is gone. Their manipulative instincts recoil, as if a predator realizes its prey has grown wings. This is not because the empath has hardened, but because their frequency has changed. Before healing, their aura carried the subtle vibrations of guilt, people-pleasing, and a subconscious desire to earn love through self-sacrifice. That frequency was a silent invitation to the broken and the controlling, to those seeking someone to fix, to feed on, or to validate their emptiness. But the instant the empath integrates their shadow, recognizes their worth, and forgives their past, the entire energetic field recalibrates. What once attracted chaos now repels it, and what once felt distant authenticity, maturity, emotional balance now moves closer as if drawn by gravity. Carl Jung once said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This truth becomes evident when an empath awakens to their inner dynamics. They realize that their attraction patterns were not random, but mirrors of unhealed pain. Healing is not just emotional, it's energetic alchemy. When the empath stops vibrating in the frequency of lack, they stop being a mirror for others' wounds. Their presence becomes a frequency of clarity, and clarity is powerful. Those who thrive on manipulation can no longer resonate with that vibration. It exposes their illusion, and so they naturally drift away. Yet this departure is not loss, it's liberation. The empath's energy becomes a light too bright for deceit and a haven for authenticity. The emptiness that follows is sacred space, preparing them for relationships that mirror peace instead of pain. This is the essence of the attraction flip. The empath no longer seeks validation through fixing others, but radiates self-respect and spiritual wisdom. They begin to attract those who meet them in wholeness, souls who are emotionally responsible, self-aware, and genuine. Jung compared the meeting of two personalities to the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Once the empath transforms internally, the chemistry of their connections must change. Manipulators sense no reaction anymore. The empath's healed boundaries neutralize their control. Instead, the relationships that now form are based on mutual growth, not dependency. The dynamic shifts from saving to sharing, from draining to sustaining. The attraction becomes an act of resonance, not rescue. This transformation is not gradual, it's instant and energetic. The moment the empath chooses self-awareness, the shift is already in motion. Spiritual wisdom reminds us that energy precedes form. So when your vibration changes, your reality must follow. What you attract becomes an honest reflection of who you've become. Healing the core wound means you no longer live as a magnet for pain. You become a magnet for truth. And as your energy aligns with authenticity, the universe rearranges itself to meet you there. The broken will fade, the balanced will arrive, and for the first time, you'll experience love not as struggle, but as flow. 7. The pitfalls Jung warned about. Carl Jung once revealed that the path of spiritual awakening is not a straight line toward light, but a dance between awareness and shadow, between the soul's expansion and the ego's subtle disguises. The first trap he warned about is the inflation trap, where new insight turns into a crown for the ego. You begin to see through illusions, to understand truths others might miss, and suddenly a quiet thought arises, they're blind, and I see. This illusion of superiority is dangerous because it replaces genuine humility with spiritual arrogance. You start to measure worth by awareness, creating invisible distance between yourself and the world. True spirituality, however, is not about being above others. It's about remembering your shared humanity. The more you awaken, the softer your heart should become. The more you understand, the less you need to prove. Awareness is not meant to inflate the self, but to dissolve it, to help you see that enlightenment and compassion must walk hand in hand. Then comes the withdrawal trap, where the soul, frightened by pain and misunderstanding, begins to mistake solitude for safety. You retreat from people, from noise, from connection, telling yourself it's spiritual protection. But Jung taught that the psyche grows through relationship, that the mirror of others reveals what still lives in our unconscious. Isolation can become a disguised form of fear, a fear of being triggered, seen, or wounded again. Yet it is in those very reflections that the alchemy of transformation occurs. Spiritual awakening doesn't ask you to hide from life. It asks you to meet life with presence. It's not about building walls, but learning how to keep your inner peace even when surrounded by chaos. Protecting your energy should never mean denying yourself the experience of being human. And perhaps the most beautiful, yet deceptive, is the helper's high. The deep satisfaction that comes from giving, healing, and guiding others. At first, it feels noble, even divine. You become the light for those in darkness, the comforter for those in pain. But over time, the need to help becomes your identity, and your worth becomes tied to being needed. Jung saw this as another shadow of the healer archetype, a self that gives endlessly to avoid facing its own emptiness. You begin to fix others to avoid fixing yourself, to love others to avoid truly loving who you are. Genuine service, however, arises from overflow, not depletion. It's when your inner cup is full, when love flows freely without condition, that your energy truly heals. Helping others should not replace your own life. It should enrich it. Each of these traps the inflated ego, the fearful withdrawal, and the overextended healer exists to test your depth of awareness. They ask whether you are ready to live your spirituality, not just understand it. They challenge you to embody balance, to walk as both human and divine. Jung's wisdom reminds us that awakening is not about escaping the world, but about becoming more deeply alive within it. The light you seek is not above your shadow. It is hidden within it, waiting to be integrated. And when you face these traps with honesty, awareness transforms from a concept into a living presence, one that breathes through you, loves through you, and expresses itself as pure being. 8. The integrated empath. A healed empath is love with boundaries, the embodiment of balance between compassion and self-respect. They care deeply, but protect themselves absolutely, no longer confusing self-sacrifice with love or guilt with responsibility. Through spirituality and deep spiritual development, they've learned that empathy isn't about absorbing pain, but about witnessing it without losing themselves. Their empathy has evolved into a sacred discipline, a conscious act of awareness, not an unconscious reaction to others' emotions. They engage consciously, staying grounded in their truth, and choose connection that uplifts rather than drains. Healing the core wound, that hidden belief that love must be earned through suffering, flips the entire energetic dynamic of attraction. Suddenly, what used to pull you toward chaos now repels you. And what once felt boring peace, mutual respect, emotional safety, becomes magnetic. You stop chasing those who mirror your pain and begin attracting those who mirror your wholeness. When your vibration no longer stems from fear or abandonment, you no longer tolerate emotional manipulation. Your energy starts communicating before you speak, silently setting boundaries that words once failed to protect. This transformation doesn't come from isolation, but from sacred solitude, the kind that rebuilds your soul's foundation. In solitude, you learn to hear your own frequency again. You practice shadow work, where you integrate what was once rejected, and creative expression becomes the language of your healing. The healed empath understands that solitude is not loneliness. It is communion with one's higher self. They cultivate psychological integrity by standing still in the storm, learning that presence is their power. The more they embrace silence, the clearer their intuition becomes, guiding them toward alignment rather than attachment. Through this process, every emotional trigger becomes a teacher, not a threat. You begin to see pain as a portal, a chance to reclaim lost fragments of your soul. Integration replaces avoidance. You no longer fear your darkness, because you understand it's the soil from which your light grows. This is true spiritual development, the union of shadow and light, empathy and boundary, love and wisdom. The empath who once absorbed everyone's energy now channels it with intention, transforming chaos into clarity. They no longer seek validation, for they've discovered that real love doesn't demand self-erasure. It celebrates authenticity. When this inner alchemy occurs, attraction flips instantly. You no longer resonate with relationships built on trauma. You attract those built on truth. The empathy that once made you vulnerable now becomes your greatest strength, a strategic, conscious force that allows you to sense, understand, and lead with heart. You see clearly, but do not absorb blindly. You love fiercely, but do not lose yourself. You stand as both healer and guardian of your energy, embodying the divine lesson that to love others fully, you must first honor yourself completely. When you finally heal the core wound, everything changes not because the world outside shifts, but because your energy no longer vibrates with pain. You stop attracting what once hurt you and begin magnetizing what aligns with your healed soul. Remember, true attraction is born from inner peace, not need. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on healing, self-mastery, and spiritual awakening. 9 steps to feel safe inside and trust yourself again. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt disconnected from yourself, like your inner world no longer feels safe to rest in? In a time when the world moves faster than our hearts can follow, learning to rebuild trust within ourselves isn't just healing, it's liberation. In today's video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore 9 powerful steps to feel safe inside and trust yourself again, so you can move through life with peace, confidence, and clarity. As you listen, ask yourself, which part of you is still waiting to feel safe enough to shine? Comment below. With your thoughts, your journey may inspire someone else's healing. 1. Listening to the quiet voice within. You've spent so many years surviving instead of living, holding your breath through every storm, waiting for the world to feel safe before you could finally exhale. Yet as Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, but grows stronger. The fears you try to bury, the emotions you refuse to feel, they don't disappear. They linger quietly in your body, shaping your decisions, your relationships, and the way you see yourself. The first step towards spiritual awakening is not escaping your pain, but listening to it, not suppressing your emotions, but understanding what they're trying to tell you. This is where healing begins, when you stop running from yourself and start listening to the gentle whisper that has always been guiding you from within. That inner voice is subtle, yet powerful. It doesn't compete with the noise of the world or the criticism in your mind. It speaks softly, through intuition, through the quiet pull in your heart that says, "This is right for me," or "Something here doesn't feel true." It It is the voice of your soul, calm and kind, waiting for you to remember it exists. The loud voice of fear will always demand your attention. It's anxious, impatient, and judgmental. But the quiet one, the one that feels like peace, even when life feels uncertain, that's the voice of truth. Spiritual wisdom teaches that listening to this voice is the foundation of trust in life, trust in your path, and most importantly, trust in yourself. To feel safe inside again, you must learn to listen without judgment. When fear arises, don't silence it or fight it. Instead, meet it with compassion, the same way you would comfort a frightened child. This gentle approach transforms fear into understanding, and understanding into self-trust. Carl Jung believed that the soul speaks through symbols, emotions, and dreams. And when you give yourself permission to listen, you reconnect with that deep intelligence that never stopped guiding you. Every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, you create a small miracle. You tell your body and mind, it's safe to rest now. It's safe to be me. Over time, this consistent act of inner listening becomes a spiritual practice. You begin to realize that spirituality is not about escaping reality, but about being fully present in it, breathing, observing, and responding from a place of love instead of fear. Spiritual awakening is not a dramatic event. It's the slow, tender process of remembering who you are beyond the noise, the trauma, and the survival patterns. You start to notice that your peace doesn't depend on external control, but on internal alignment. You begin to trust that the same energy that moves the stars and tides also moves through you, whispering, "You are safe. You are loved. You are enough." Each time you pause to listen to that voice, you rebuild your inner foundation. You begin to trust your own timing, your own rhythm, your own sense of what feels right. The outer world may still test you, but the storms no longer define you because your roots are deep within your own being. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, realizing that safety isn't something you find, it's something you remember. And when you return to that quiet place inside, where your soul gently speaks and your heart finally feels at home, you awaken to the truth that trust was never lost. It was only waiting for you to listen. 2. Understanding the inner walls. The walls you built within yourself were never mistakes. They were sacred forms of protection, silent witnesses of your strength during moments when life felt unsafe or uncertain. Carl Jung reminds us that these defenses are not enemies to destroy, but memories of survival, evidence of how the soul adapted to protect what was most vulnerable. When you stop fighting them and instead sit beside them with understanding, something shifts. You begin to see that healing doesn't happen by force. It unfolds through compassion, through the gentle act of thanking your defenses for keeping you safe when you didn't know how to protect yourself. When you learn to approach your inner barriers with tenderness, they start to lose their heaviness. You realize they were never meant to imprison you, but to guard the fragile parts of your heart until you were strong enough to face life again. In spirituality and spiritual development, this is the sacred turning point when you stop running from your pain and start listening to it. The walls that once kept the world out begin to reveal their purpose. They were not built out of weakness, but out of a deep instinct for survival. Every wall holds a story, a moment of fear, loss, or betrayal that shaped the way you learned to protect yourself. Instead of judging these stories, learn to honor them. Behind each defense lies a younger version of you, scared yet deeply wise. When you meet this version with love instead of criticism, you begin to integrate the fragments of your soul that were once scattered by pain. This is the essence of Jung's teaching on individuation, the journey toward wholeness through embracing every part of yourself, including the wounded and hidden ones. The more you resist your defenses, the more power they hold. But the moment you acknowledge them with love, they begin to dissolve, not as enemies defeated, but as guardians finally at rest. When old patterns rise, the urge to retreat, to overthink, to control pause, and whisper inwardly, "Thank you for protecting me when I couldn't protect myself." This is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. Through gratitude, you rewire your relationship with pain. Through compassion, you transform resistance into acceptance. Gradually, your walls no longer confine you. They evolve into sacred boundaries that honor your peace and protect your energy. Your inner world softens when love becomes your foundation. You start to live with more trust, more openness, and more awareness of your inner power. The walls that once separated you from others become bridges to deeper understanding. In the light of spirituality, every defense turns into wisdom, every scar into strength. And as your heart learns to feel safe again within itself, you rediscover the quiet truth that healing was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering that you were always whole, even when hidden behind your walls. If this message resonates with your soul, say it out loud. I am ready to break down my inner walls. I am safe within myself, and I trust the wisdom that guides me. 3. The gift of slowing down. Carl Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the soul," reminding us that when we slow down, we don't lose time. We return to ourselves. In a world obsessed with speed, constant noise, and endless achievement, slowing down becomes an act of rebellion and healing. It allows your nervous system to remember peace, your mind to find clarity, and your soul to breathe again. When you stop rushing to become someone or to reach somewhere, you realize that presence is not the absence of action. It's the alignment of your being with the rhythm of life itself. Rest is not laziness. It's presence in its purest form. Every time you pause to breathe, to feel, to notice the world around you, you strengthen your connection with the only moment that truly exists, this one. In stillness, something magical happens. You begin to reconnect with your body, your breath, and your essence. You start to feel what you've been avoiding and see what's been waiting to be acknowledged. You discover that safety isn't found in control, success, or certainty. It's found in calm awareness, in the simple knowing that you are okay right here and now. This awareness becomes a quiet sanctuary inside you, a space untouched by chaos, where peace lives not as an idea, but as a living presence. As you slow down, the walls between your conscious and unconscious begin to soften. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that it's only in stillness that the voice of the unconscious can rise to the surface. The more you listen, the more you understand the language of your own soul, whispering what it truly needs to feel whole again. Every slow breath is a bridge that brings you back home to yourself. You begin to feel grounded in your body, rooted in the now, no longer chasing or running from life. The world outside might still spin at its usual speed, but inside, you create a rhythm that's steady and safe. You stop treating rest as something you must earn and start recognizing it as your birthright. The paradox is that by slowing down, you actually begin to move with more purpose, clarity, and grace. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer hurry, you harmonize. You realize that peace was never missing. It was just buried beneath the rush to become someone you already are. And as you honor stillness more deeply, you find that time expands. The small moments, a warm ray of sunlight, the sound of your breath, the beat of your heart, become sacred again. You start to trust that everything unfolds in divine timing, that you don't need to force what's meant for you. In that surrender, you awaken to a quiet truth. The soul was never meant to race. It was meant to remember. To feel safe inside is to know that life moves through you, not against you. When you slow down enough to truly listen, you realize that peace is not something defined. It's something you return to again and again in the stillness of your own being. 4. Meeting your inner child. Your younger self still lives deep within you, quietly holding the memories of what love and safety once meant. That child remembers moments of joy, laughter, and warmth, but also the times when trust was broken, when love felt uncertain, and when fear became the only form of protection. Carl Jung once said, "In every adult, there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming." To meet that inner child is to meet the forgotten truth of your soul. It's not about going back to the past, but reclaiming the part of you that still believes in tenderness, curiosity, and wonder. This is not only psychology, it is spirituality in its purest form, the sacred journey of returning home to yourself. When you approach your inner child with gentleness, you begin to rewrite the emotional story that shaped you. Whisper softly to them, "You're safe now." With those words, the old tension starts to melt. The body relaxes. The heart opens. You are telling every cell in your being that the chaos is over. This act of self-reassurance becomes the foundation of healing. It is a quiet yet powerful declaration that love no longer depends on others. It flows from within. Through this awareness, you step into spiritual awakening, where peace replaces survival and softness replaces fear. The inner child carries both your pain and your potential. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from integration, uniting the child and the adult, the joy and the sorrow, the shadow and the light. By embracing the parts of yourself you once denied, you dissolve the walls between who you were and who you are becoming. This merging of opposites is what allows your soul to expand. It is not about fixing the past, but about understanding that every wound once held wisdom, every heartbreak taught resilience, and every moment of fear was only a call for love. As you reconnect with that younger version of yourself, old emotions may surface, perhaps tears, perhaps laughter, perhaps a silence so deep it feels like time itself is breathing through you. Don't turn away. Sit with it. Listen to the voice that says, "I'm scared," or "I miss being loved." Then from the strength of your present self, answer softly, "I'm here now." This dialogue between your past and present self builds a bridge of trust inside you. Slowly, that trust becomes your anchor. It allows you to walk through life grounded, calm, and open-hearted. In this sacred meeting between your inner child and your awakened self, transformation unfolds naturally. The creativity that once hid behind fear begins to rise again. The playfulness you thought you lost starts to return. The heart remembers how to trust, and through it all, you realize that your spiritual awakening is not about escaping pain, but about embracing it with love so complete that nothing remains unloved. Your inner child does not need saving. They only need to be seen. When you finally see them, when you hold them without judgment, the fragmented parts of your soul begin to unite. And in that unity, you rediscover the radiant wholeness that was always waiting for you. Have you ever tried to reconnect with your inner child, the part of you that still believes, still dreams, and still feels deeply? If you have, share what you discovered in the comments below so others can be inspired by your healing journey. If not, comment, "I will begin," to take this first gentle step toward trusting yourself again. 5. Allowing feelings to breathe. Feelings don't disappear when you ignore them. They wait patiently beneath the surface, longing to be acknowledged. As Carl Jung wisely said, "What we resist persists." Every emotion you experience carries a hidden message meant to guide your spiritual development and inner balance. Sadness softly whispers that you need rest. Fear calls for reassurance and safety. Anger seeks understanding and clarity. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, you create space for healing to unfold naturally. Instead of labeling emotions as good or bad, let them breathe, let them speak, and let them move through you like waves returning to the ocean. Suppression traps pain inside the body, but awareness sets it free. This is not about indulging emotions or drowning in them. It's about allowing them to exist, to move, and to teach you what they came to show. Every feeling has its own rhythm, and when you breathe with it rather than fight it, transformation begins. Take sadness when you allow it to flow. It cleanses the heart and restores peace. Letting fear be seen brings courage, because facing it reveals your own strength. Meeting anger with compassion turns fire into power, showing you where your truth has been silenced. When you treat emotions as sacred messengers instead of burdens, you stop being a prisoner of your inner storms. You become the calm center that observes without losing control. This practice is the essence of spirituality, not escaping the human experience, but embracing it fully until it becomes a doorway to wisdom. So when discomfort rises, breathe deeply and remind yourself, this too is energy wanting to move. Speak kindly to your feelings. Tell your fear it's safe to relax. Tell your sadness it can rest now. Tell your anger that you're listening. As you do, the heaviness starts to lift, because emotions lose their power when they are met with awareness. Integration begins here when you stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. You learn that feeling deeply does not make you weak. It makes you real, alive, and whole. In this gentle surrender, you begin to feel safe inside your own being again. And that is where true spiritual development takes root, in the quiet courage to let your heart feel, heal, and finally breathe. 6. The power of honest reflection. Healing begins when you find the courage to face yourself with honesty and tenderness, because true transformation doesn't happen through pretending to be fine, but through the quiet bravery of acknowledging what hurts. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." These words carry timeless spiritual wisdom, reminding you that inner light is not something you chase. It's something that appears naturally when you stop running from your shadows. Honest reflection is not about blaming yourself or labeling your pain. It's about saying to yourself, "This is what I feel. This is where I am." In that moment of gentle awareness, shame begins to loosen its grip, and what was once heavy starts to feel lighter. When you sit in stillness and allow your truth to surface, you begin to see that your wounds were never your weakness. They were your teachers. Jung believed that what we fail to make conscious will continue to shape our lives without our awareness, and we will call it fate. This means that every time you face your fears, instead of suppressing them, you take your power back. Every time you listen to your sadness, instead of judging it, you invite healing into the places that once felt forgotten. Honest reflection opens the doorway between who you are now and who you are becoming, teaching you that awareness itself is the medicine your soul has been waiting for. To reflect honestly is to meet yourself with compassion instead of criticism. It's sitting quietly and saying, "I see the fear, I see the anger, I see the grief, and I still accept myself." In that act of self-acceptance, your nervous system relaxes, your heart softens, and your spirit begins to remember what safety feels like. You start to trust yourself again because you no longer abandon your emotions when they arise. You realize that healing doesn't mean never feeling pain again. It means no longer fearing the presence of pain. Through this process, what was once dark begins to reveal its hidden beauty, and what was once chaotic begins to make sense. Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that enlightenment is not about perfection, but wholeness. To make the darkness conscious is to honor every part of your being, the one who is learning, the one who is tired, the one who is still afraid. As you bring these parts into awareness, something miraculous happens. Shame dissolves, and peace quietly enters. The more you allow yourself to see clearly, the less you need to hide. And in that clarity, you find freedom, the kind that no one can give or take away. The truth is, you don't heal by becoming someone new. You heal by remembering who you already are beneath the layers of protection. So, when you feel lost or uncertain, return to yourself. Sit with your feelings without running. Listen without judgment, and breathe into your truth. You will begin to notice that your reflection, once filled with pain, now carries light. For as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Through honest reflection, you no longer let fate control you. You become the conscious author of your own becoming. If this message about honest reflection spoke to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow together in truth and spiritual wisdom, one honest reflection at a time. 7. The beauty of boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers. They are sacred expressions of self-respect and emotional clarity. As Carl Jung taught, wholeness is the art of living in alignment with your true self, not the self shaped by fear, guilt, or the need for approval, but the one that knows peace is more valuable than being liked. When you honor your limits, you are sending a message to your soul that your inner harmony matters more than external validation. This is not selfishness, it's self-preservation. It's a form of spiritual awakening that teaches you to value stillness over chaos, authenticity over pleasing others, and peace over performance. Your boundaries become invisible threads of energy that define where you end and the world begins, allowing your heart to rest in safety and your spirit to breathe freely. Boundaries are not cold lines that push people away. They are living bridges that connect your soul to truth. Every no you speak from a calm heart becomes an affirmation of your worth, and every yes you give from alignment becomes a gesture of love. When you learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear, you step into spiritual wisdom, the kind that flows from deep inner awareness. It's the realization that your energy is sacred and that what you allow into your life shapes the rhythm of your entire being. A weak boundary scatters your energy, but a clear one gathers it back into power. It's like the riverbanks that hold the flow of water. Boundaries don't stop the current, they guide it. Carl Jung reminded us that healing the psyche requires integrating the shadow of those hidden aspects we once abandoned to survive. Setting boundaries is one of the most loving ways to begin that integration. When you draw a line and say, "This is what I need to feel safe," you are reclaiming your inner child, protecting the part of you that once felt unseen or overextended. That act of self-protection becomes an act of self-love. And self-love is the beginning of every true spiritual awakening. You start to understand that safety doesn't come from others agreeing with your choices. It comes from trusting yourself enough to stand by them. Boundaries turn fear into faith that your truth is enough, that your peace is worth guarding, and that your energy deserves to be honored. As you deepen in this awareness, you'll notice that your relationships begin to shift. Those who are meant to walk with you will honor your boundaries because they sense the respect you hold for yourself. Those who cannot will naturally drift away, and you will bless them without resentment. The moment you stop abandoning yourself for others is the moment the universe stops sending lessons of betrayal and begins sending mirrors of respect. This is the quiet power of spiritual wisdom, knowing that the world outside you rearranges itself to match the peace within you. Every time you choose yourself with love instead of fear, you rise higher in consciousness. Boundaries, then, are not walls that divide. They are the architecture of inner freedom, the structure through which your soul learns to live with both openness and strength. 8. Reconnecting with the present moment. Safety doesn't exist in the past or the future. It only exists in this moment. The mind loves to wander between what was and what could be, but the soul only breathes now. Carl Jung said, "Those who look outside dream. Those who look inside awaken." And this awakening happens the moment you stop chasing after control and begin to feel what is right in front of you. In this breath, in this heartbeat, in the quiet rhythm of being alive, you return to the simplicity of existence. Stillness is not emptiness. It's the hidden home of your spirit, the space where peace begins to speak softly again after years of noise. When you allow yourself to simply be without judging, fixing, or rushing, you reconnect with the core of your being, the silent presence that never left you. In spirituality, the greatest act of courage is not to conquer your fears, but to come back to yourself over and over again, to feel the air entering your lungs, to sense the pulse within your chest, and to witness your thoughts without drowning in them. When you do, life no longer feels like something to survive, but something to experience. The present moment becomes a sacred bridge that leads you out of anxiety and back into trust. It teaches you that peace is not earned through effort. It is revealed through awareness. You start to understand that control is an illusion, and that safety is not something you build around you, but something you awaken within you. This is spiritual development in its truest form. The gradual remembering that you were never broken, only distracted. As you breathe deeper into the now, your nervous system softens, your thoughts lose their sharp edges, and your heart begins to trust its own rhythm again. The more you practice presence, the more your body feels like home. You learn to respond instead of react, to listen instead of escape, and to live instead of merely exist. Even in silence, you begin to feel a quiet dialogue between your soul and the universe. A conversation that reminds you that everything is connected and you are held by something greater than fear. Spirituality, then, is not an escape from reality, but the art of living fully inside it. When you return to this moment with gentleness, life greets you with calm clarity. You stop searching for safety outside yourself and realize that it has always been waiting here in your breath, your awareness, your stillness. And from this sacred place, the journey of trusting yourself begins again. To reaffirm your connection to the present, take a deep breath and anchor yourself here now. Comment below, "I am fully present," to declare your intention to live with awareness and inspire others to do the same. 9. Letting yourself be seen, even by you. Stop trying to fix yourself and start learning how to truly see yourself. When you finally stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and gently whisper, "What if I don't need to be fixed?" something deep inside begins to breathe again. In this quiet moment of surrender, you realize that healing is not about changing who you are, but about meeting yourself exactly where you are. As Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us, wholeness is found not in perfection, but in embracing opposites, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, courage and fear. Every part of you deserves to exist. When you stop rejecting your emotions and instead listen to what they are trying to tell you, you transform pain into understanding and chaos into clarity. You begin to understand that acceptance doesn't stop growth. It refines it. Acceptance is what allows growth to evolve into peace. You no longer chase safety in people, achievements, or validation, because you begin to sense that safety has always been within you, waiting for your permission to return. You learn to soothe yourself with gentleness instead of judgment. When anxiety rises, you take a deep breath and whisper, "I am here for you." When your mind criticizes, you respond with compassion instead of punishment. Each small act of kindness toward yourself becomes a brick in the foundation of inner security. And when the old patterns appear, the perfectionism, the self-blame, the fear of being seen, you no longer fight them. You observe them with curiosity and ask, "What are you protecting me from?" That question alone shifts everything. It turns your inner critic into a wounded child simply asking for safety. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You stop trying to erase your past or hide your scars because they are not proof of your brokenness, but evidence of your becoming. You begin to live from a softer strength, one that does not need to prove, perform, or please. With time, you understand that letting yourself be seen does not mean exposing your pain to everyone. It means refusing to hide from yourself. It means standing before the mirror and saying, I see you. I'm staying. That is self-trust. That is the moment your heart starts to feel safe again. Acceptance becomes your daily practice, not a final goal, but a way of living, breathing, and relating to the world. And as you keep choosing this softness, you discover the truth Jung always hinted at. Safety was never something to find outside. It was, and always will be, the quiet strength that lives faithfully within you. True healing begins when you no longer seek safety outside of yourself, but remember that peace was within you all along. Every time you choose self-trust over fear, you rebuild the foundation of your inner world. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So, let this be your reminder: you are safe, you are guided, and you already have everything you need within. If this message spoke to your soul, please like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Together, let's continue this journey of awakening and self-trust.